We have one of our upcoming guests here. Do I bring
LSU 2023 with Jaden Daniels, Hawaii with your boy Colt Brennan?
There you go.
Why?
Colt Brennan, Devon Bass, Sam Sicatelli. Let's go.
Mike, do you want me to bring? We have one guest in here. Do I bring the guest in first, or do I wait for both to be?
Who's the guest?
Jess.
Yeah, bring her in real quick.
All right. Here we go.
Hey, Jess. We'll onboard you first. I'm sure you know Golic Jr. isn't here just yet. Thank you for doing this. Always appreciate it. Thank you for walking straight into the buzzsaw of HURRICADE 2025. People have been eagerly anticipating your appearance here. Jess has great stuff with Metal Art Media, and now she's the co-host of The Echoes, what I believe to be can only be a great Notre Dame podcast. Those are two great Notre Dame voices. Thank you for joining us, Jess. A lot of people around the Miami Hurricane world recirculated your clip talking to Ian Book, and it seemed as though you were fishing to hear anything other than Miami was the toughest place to play. Now, I know you pretty well. You won't want to give us that. You won't want to give us that satisfaction. But were you indeed as bummed as your face looked?
I don't know. I truly do not know where this narrative came from, because I was asking a follow-up question, which is like, you know what, I don't imagine Chris Cody would know what that is, because I heard him laughing about it on the Levitard show today. But I was like, was the big house louder? You think I want Ian Book to be like, yeah, Michigan was the loud. No offense to Miami, they are not Notre Dame's biggest rival. Mm-hmm. I think USC, Michigan, and I would even put Michigan State ahead. And like, I guess Navy. I mean, I guess we don't.
You gotta play Navy on the road for them to be a rival. You won't do that. You'll only play them in baseball stadiums or other countries.
They want to make money off the games, and they want to try to sell out as big of a stadium as they can, Mike. Yeah, I don't know why I would want him to say like Michigan is louder.
It seemed as though, Jess, it just kind of seemed like when he said like, well, it was probably louder than Athens, and you're like, Michigan? And he was like, no, yeah, it was louder than Michigan. And you're like, Blacksburg? And he's like, yeah, it was louder than Blacksburg. It kind of felt like you were going to go like Mike Piazza hitting the game, the walk-off home run in Shea Stadium post 9/11. It felt like you were just kept looking for reasons.
I was just a baby when that happened, so I don't even really get the reference.
Yes, we know you're very young.
I'm extremely young. Mike, I would just add that it did confirm one of my priors, which is that Blacksburg, I think, is a little overrated. I think it's a little overrated as a home venue. I feel like I know you guys are former ESPN employees, Mike and Mike. There was like a 5-year period where I feel like ESPN was trying to tell everyone how Blacksburg was the scariest road environment in college football, and I wasn't really buying it. So when we had Ian on, I was like, perfect. Someone who's played at Virginia Tech and Michigan, places considered the loudest college football stadiums, but I credit to Hard Rock Stadium. It was very loud, and I believe him because I watched it on TV. So why would I dispute that?
Well, it's also kind of a cell phone by Miami fans too. Like, hey, one time we could be really, really loud, and then the rest of the years we won't ever be that loud again.
You guys are pretty good.
I misread the team that you were hating on. Clearly, it was Virginia Tech, not Miami. Golic Jr., thank you for joining us and hopping on here in progress. I know you got a very busy schedule, and you're calling a game here. The last time Notre Dame came down to Miami was 2017. It was also the last time that we had 3 top 10 matchups going on in the same weekend, if you can believe it or not. I was harassing you all game. Now, I feel even more confident this time around. I think the wrong team is favored. You guys really shut a lot of people up. As the season progressed, you guys got tougher. It didn't matter the injuries. You guys earned it. You were worthy national runners-up. But it's a different roster this year. What are your expectations headed into this game at Hard Rock Stadium?
My worst memory of that night, by the way, I had done a game at Kansas State, and we had to drive back to the airport in Kansas City. So it's me and Anish Shroff in a car driving back. And at the end of that game, I almost threw my phone out of the car because I was watching on my phone. And then as soon as it goes final, I get a FaceTime from Mike of him just putting his ass up on FaceTime because he told me before the game that it wasn't his bare ass, thankfully, but he told me before the game he was going to show it to me when Miami beat Notre Dame. So he was a man of his word in a way that like actually made me laugh in the middle of what was just an awful night watching football. But
wait,
I
can,
don't know.
can I interrupt for a second?
Yeah,
Mike, what
go
were
for
the other two ranked games that weekend? Because I remember being at Clemson that weekend. And so I didn't even really get to watch most of the Miami game because I was like out partying at some bar and it was just on TV. And I was like, oh, well, that one's over.
So forgive me if I get one of the names wrong here, but I believe Georgia, a number 1 Georgia team played in number 10 Auburn that week, and TCU was good that year, and they played like a Big 12 Oklahoma type of team.
I don't know why I was at Clemson then. Go on, go Joe.
But outside, but there's never been an early slate this early in the season of 3 top 10 matchups since 1945.
Wow. It is amazing. But Mike, like you said, you know, it's a different team, different roster. Like it certainly is in a lot of important places. We know on the Miami front, quarterback, secondary, some guys at wide receiver, like the Notre Dame roster outside of quarterback, it's a lot of the same dudes.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them that especially like, and I get that's the part that's most interesting to me as we go through, you know, different era of college football and the way everyone always talks about, but like how quickly can you get everyone on board in that way? And how much does a veteran quarterback go the long way in that? Because for the rest of, especially Notre Dame's offensive roster, like O-line's largely the same dudes from the from last season outside of like, you know, I think one and you know the guys that were in later that ended up being transfers. Wide receivers got some important transfers, but some key guys that were back there. Tight end's been there for a few years now. And defensively, it's the same thing. So they're walking into like 2017, and me and Jess were talking about this in the pod the other day. I don't really feel like there had been a ton of games, big game experience for Notre Dame at that point for that roster in the lead up. Whereas like the core of this roster is just coming off 3 of the bigger wins in recent program history, all in the same stretch in the lead up to that championship game. So I'll be interested to see the mettle of the rest of that team in an environment that we know can absolutely let it get away from you.
The quarterback situation, just where is the fan base at with that? Where are the analysts like yourself at with that? I'm trying to make sense of it from the outside. We're all kind of making conspiracy theories based on certain statements that Coach Freeman made in his press conference. Where are you guys at? What's the state media saying here?
First of all, we are not state media, and I will make sure
We are.
I have a.
We are.
I know Mike is.
Yeah.
I at least personally don't have any financial entanglements with Notre Dame at the moment.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Check out her podcast that is covering the Notre Dame football team, The Echoes.
Independent currently, not the independent podcast. That's a different Notre Dame podcast. No free publicity. I don't think there's any conspiracy behind it other than both quarterbacks played well, so they had to pick one. And that is, I think it's kind of like an Occam's razor situation where like going into the spring ball, they were like, let's see what CJ Carr can do. We have a lot of belief in him. We spent, you know, a lot of money on his recruitment and making sure he came to Notre Dame, and he was an early enrollee, and he played really well in the spring, played really well in the summer practices, and then came into camp. And Kenny Minchie they still weren't 100% set on Carr, and Kenny Minchie started playing well, and both kind of were at the same pace. And Kenny Minchie is also a year older school-wise from CJ Carr. So he had been around for a little bit longer, and they just were like, both are good. Well, let's just go with the one that we had more of a good hunch about in the spring and in the early part of the summer. And so that's kind of why I think they picked CJ Carr. Now, that could absolutely be the wrong choice. We will find out. But I do think they kind of just had to pick someone.
What a blessing. That quarterback situation. Two QBs.
I mean, when you've got a quarterback room where no one's played meaningful snaps, like I had quarterback competition going into my last year where Tommy Reese had played a bunch of games for us and Everett Golson hasn't. And in that case, it's just like, all right, are you going to opt for the steady hand or are you going to opt for an upside play considering the gifts there? With both of these guys, they just don't know. And like, you know, Marcus has been around long enough now. Mike Denbrock's been coaching offense for a long time in college football. Like, I think there is part of them that kind of like Jess said, you go off what you believe and what you see for the most part and understand you're not really going to have an answer until we get to the first quarter of this game.
It was great to have this spin because we had Chris Felica on earlier, and he had spoken to some people plugged in, and he suggested that part of this decision was informed based on NIL and recruitment. And if you name one the starter, one is more likely to portal, but it was good to hear that. The good news for CJ Carr is he's got veteran wide receivers that have made big plays in big time games who can forget the Orange Bowl. Jeremiah Love and Great House, they made incredible plays down the stretch. There is a perceived strength at the wide receiver position for Miami, even though the unit is totally different outside of OJ Frederic. Secondary was a perceived weakness. Now, totally differing unit, but do you expect Notre Dame to exploit some of these weaknesses and basically make Miami prove that book out on their defense isn't fair?
Can I just go back to the quarterback thing really quick? Because
Sure,
this is not a knock on FINKA, because I've heard a lot of other analysts make the same comment about NIL and like players winning starting jobs because of NIL. And I totally think that it's very possible that that is a thing that a coach considers. I'm not going to pretend like I know what Marcus Freeman or any other head coach is thinking, but I also think that the sort of obvious counterpoint is like, well, there's a reason why they got all that NIL money. And a lot of that is because they are players who the coaches really like their traits and they believe they have a lot of upside. So like, yeah, it could be a coincidence or it could be because of NIL, but it also could just be like, yeah, this is kind of how this works. Like you are more valued, so you were making more NIL money to begin with. You know what I mean?
Totally fair. Totally fair. To the point about the wide receivers challenging Miami's defense, I know Notre Dame is in install right now. They've been game planning. How do you think Notre Dame approaches this? Look, I just said they're going to run the ball and pass the ball on Miami's weak defense.
Yeah.
I think that's a safe bet. But is there one thing that you guys are hearing around the program that they feel especially good about?
Well, I mean, I think to your point, like, are they going to immediately try and go and exploit a secondary that's got a bunch of new parts? I would imagine for Notre Dame, like, they're going to have to be timely with that. But with a young quarterback, it's like, you got to make 4 or 5 plays. Like, I'm not going to ask you to come out here and throw to open up the run when I got an offensive line full of blue chip guys who all played a bunch last year and the best running back in college football in the backfield. Like, if anything, the thing I'm kind of interested to see in the pass game, and you only get so much because college football is under lock and key. But early on in Notre Dame's camp, a lot of the buzz was, hey, you got Love and Jadarian Price and some more 2-back sets. They're talking about J Love's development as a wide receiver and a guy that can legitimately split out in the slot and do some stuff like that. Like, I'll be really curious to see the number of ways, and maybe some of them are short area passes, on how Mike Denbrock wants to get their best player the ball more often, rather than, hey, let's try and spread it out to all these wide receivers with a quarterback that's never done this in a game.
So Canes Cat Heat 305 says, State Media's CanesInSight. As the Baghdad Bob of the Canes franchise, I got to say your answer sounded very genuine and honest. So you have convinced me that the quarterback situation is not maybe what we think.
It was a good point that players that are perceived to be more talented make more NIL.
I mean,
I gotta ask you.
someone had to say it. I'm sure you thought about it.
He threw 3 interceptions in that scrimmage, Jess. I know it, and I know you know it too.
Oh, he definitely did. And I think that's part of why the narrative around choosing CJ Carr from like a fan perspective has been so fraught, but none of us are in practice. I mean, there's also like the reports from the first practice session, which was open to the media, was like, yeah, he threw picks, but 2 of them were like insane diving interceptions. One was a deflection. So it's like, who the hell knows? Like, we don't really know. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I watched every single practice in camp and I know CJ Carr is not going to turn the ball over. It's very likely he might. And that is, the pitfalls of starting your first game on the road in college football.
Yeah, I was going to say, you almost have to build that in. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mike. I stepped on you there. But historically, if he does turn that ball over early and that crowd does get into it, we have a fairly recent track record to say that can really snowball quickly for Notre Dame. But to your point, this team faced a lot of adversity. That Penn State game, they had no business winning that game. They shook it off in that building. Now it's different when everyone's wearing orange, no doubt. But I also think that that's a very healthy point that you guys made, and that they rattled off 3 of the biggest wins in succession in program history while they were incredibly hurt. And while they leaned on Riley Leonard and he made big time plays, and I think it's really understated how good and important he was for them. They do have a safety net around this quarterback of really experienced players that they can lean on in a moment like this. They have more big game experience, no doubt.
I'm a Riley Leonard appreciator, so I would just like to point, a lot of Notre Dame fans were not super high on him after they lost to Northern Illinois, thought that he was a terrible passer and an inaccurate passer and a bad quarterback. But I think he got Notre Dame's offense out of a lot of tricky spots with his legs and converted a lot of, 3rd and 4th downs that CJ Carr, I don't think is a statue in the pocket. I think he can scoot. But we have yet to see it. And that, Riley Leonard was a veteran quarterback when he showed up last season. It wasn't his first time playing football. So he had developed a skill set that is really good to have in extending drives.
Well, and like Riley wasn't just like a scooter. Like there was nothing deceptive about the speed. Like Riley outran
He's like
SEC defenders on the edge. Like he left Georgia dudes in the dust on the perimeter. And we've seen it in the NFL. Like he can move like that. And that'll be the biggest factor, right? Is he also like, it wasn't a ton of zone read stuff. Like it was, hey, it's 4th and 1. Guess what they're going to do? Human battering ram time with Riley Leonard running QB power from the gun. So that play is going to be out of the playbook. The zone read stuff's probably going to be out. And so how they manage the back edge of defenses now, whether that's, motion stuff with the tight end, RPOs that cue on other guys outside of that is like the read key. That's the stuff I'm really interested in. Cause like Mike Denbrock last year, a lot of really like interesting bespoke set pieces where, hey, I've got certain tight ends I want and certain looks, all that stuff that can be a tell in certain cases. And at times it was Notre Dame was masters of the obvious and they were just going to go out there and cave your head in it. So does there have to be a little more sleight of hand or window dressing now because you got a young guy who can't run as well?
And I got to say, we have a lot of big guests on this show talking about some of the top people in media. Coach Jay Lucas was on this show earlier, and the chat overwhelmingly the most popular is maybe the wrong word, the most talked about,
most engaged
guests certainly were you two. So, and that was from the beginning of the show. So I just had to tell you that. But I got to ask Jessica, you spend a lot of time here in Miami as someone that's not from here, right? So even outsider's eye of the city, you experienced it firsthand. This is rivalry week. So if you have anything you need to say about the city of Miami, I'm curious about your experience in Miami as an outsider. And if you want to leave out the positive, go ahead. If you want to keep it in, we'll take that too. But I'm curious from an outsider's eye, your experience in the city of Miami.
Yeah, I think, it's a mixed bag, Miami. I liked the restaurants. I liked the weather in the winter. I hated driving on I-95. Big reason why I'm not coming down to this game. I don't want anything to do with that. I would rather spend my Labor Day almost anywhere else than in South Florida, with all due respect to all of you. I'm sure lovely folks.
Leave the respect.
Jury's still out on if you're lovely, Mike.
That could have gone way worse for me, so I'm happy. That's as political an answer as you can give.
Rivalry week.
No, I still do weekly appearances on the Levitard show, so we'll leave it at that.
Jess, I'm curious to know if your position has evolved on Carson Beck, because you and I had healthy debates on Carson Beck when he was linked to Miami initially. But Gojo, I'd like to go to you first here because I'm not familiar with your Carson Beck opinions just yet. Carson Beck, I think it's got the narrative around him got so ugly during the offseason, the breakup, the car being stolen, and the fact that he got hurt, and it seemed as though the reports were Gunner was the locker room's guy.
Sure.
Then we put on the tape and Carson Beck made some dazzling throws. And then I see him this fall camp, and I'll admit he had a better fall camp than Cam Ward had last year. And Cam Ward was damn good. What are your expectations for Carson Beck this year at Miami?
Yeah, honestly, that assessment is kind of like what I feel overall for Miami, which is, and Jess and I talked about this the other day previewing the game, the offense is going to be worse. It was the best offense in college football last year, and I don't think it's going to be the best offense in college football again with as many new parts. You portaled the quarterback last year and it worked, but he's also a very different player. Like to your point about him having a better camp, I'm not all that surprised. Like Cam Ward seems like a gamer. Like I don't expect Carson Beck to be majoring in as many like 4 and 5 second hold on to the ball and just YOLO it down the field at the end, especially, the connection he clearly had with Xavier Restrepo, a guy that had, tons of experience at the school. But it's like that in like the defense. Like the defense, I don't think is going to be as bad as it was last year. So if that group improves some and the offense is still a top 25 unit, this can be a better season overall for Miami. And so what you mentioned about Carson Beck, like that's kind of where I am going into last season. So before we got to any of the narrative stuff, and he was being talked about as the number 1 overall pick, going back and watching him getting ready for that season, my assessment was that's too rich for my blood. I don't think he's a number 1 overall pick going into that season. Whereas we get to the point now where, like you said, like I think people forget there's a very good college quarterback who at times could touch the ceiling of great. And so I think that's kind of where I still sit now. He's the best quarterback Notre Dame's going to see as it sits right now on their schedule, I think by a pretty comfortable margin. And so to see that week 1 where, again, going back to the stretch Notre Dame was on last year, Indiana, solid quarterback play, but was overmatched personnel-wise overall. Georgia, again, Gunnar Stockton coming into a situation where he got in the SEC championship, and then that's your start is in that environment. And then, you get to Drew Aller and Penn State, where we know they had a substandard passing attack outside of Tyler Warren last year. He's incredibly talented. He's number 1 overall pick talent and certainly improved. But, outside of that, they didn't see a ton of world beaters in that stretch until Will Howard, who's again, very good college quarterback who's got a chance to probably hang around the NFL for a little bit. So I do think he is one of the better quarterbacks Notre Dame has seen in some time at that position, even if, again, I don't think he's the number 1 overall pick in the draft.
You guys have been so great with your time, so I'll be brief. And Jess, if you have anything on Carson Beck, feel free to tack it on to the front end. I saw Lou Riddick today pick Miami in this game, but also later in a Sports Center appearance said that if Notre Dame gets past Miami, they will run the table. So he's playing both sides. I actually do think that your schedule is low-key tough, and not enough people are making enough about that. Arkansas, Boise, everyone, just because Notre Dame made it to the college football playoff final last year, is assuming that those are going to be easy games, and I don't think so. And a different quarterback, different type of style. He needs to grow as the season progresses. Where do you have Notre Dame in relation to this schedule? Because they could still be a very good team, and the schedule could be undervalued.
Well, first I want to say, Mike, you forgot about Blake Horvath being one of the best quarterbacks, Notre Dame, the Navy quarterback.
I'm a big Blake guy. He's
but
tougher. He's
spiritually, the thing that would be the funniest would be if Notre Dame went 11-1 again and lost to Navy or like another G5 team or G6 team.
Big rival.
Year.
That's a rivalry game.
Big rival.
It is a big rival.
Ahead of Miami.
They make documentaries about that rivalry.
It is a night game on NBC for God knows what reason. But anyways, I digress. Mike, to your point. I mean, I think the ceiling is as high as the amount of solid average to above average play you'll get out of your quarterback. Like I truly believe that if CJ Carr is just a decent to good college quarterback, I think Notre Dame's going to be great. I really do love the defense, and like they lost a couple of key pieces and Xavier Watts and Jack Kaiser, but there's a lot of the same pieces there. And even players that, had a moment last year because of injury where they got to play and you got to see what the future will look like. Those players are going to have even bigger roles this season. So if nothing else, I think the defense and the run game are things that I really like. But it's just, you just need a quarterback that's not going to turn the ball over and do, red zone interceptions, costly turnovers, pick sixes, fumbles. Like that's just the thing that you need to cut out. But if CJ Carr is good, if he doesn't even have to be like amazing, then I think, Notre Dame's in a really good spot.
Well, thank you guys for joining us. Mike, you have a point to tack on to what Jess said?
I was just going to say, if CJ Carr is an average college quarterback, Notre Dame can be a playoff team. If he ends up being above average and really shows something with an arm, they can win a national title with this roster.
Wow. All right. Excellent stuff from Jess Smetana and Mike Golic Jr. Check out the Echoes. Notre Dame's always going to be playing nationally relevant games. So if you want good Notre Dame insight, you'd be hard pressed to find a better podcast out there. Thank you guys so much for coming in enemy territory. I know Notre Dame doesn't typically do that a lot. They like the neutral site. So I appreciate you guys making the road trip.
What are you talking about? We're not talking Nick Saban's Alabama here.
It's very true. You play like 3 road games last year. Who are you kidding? All right. Thank you guys very much.
Guys.
It's what you do.
Okay.
It's what I love that you faded them out. Thank you.